Rick.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to class this week. I haven't done class for a while. I guess I can't remember now, maybe a couple weeks or so, or a week and a half or something. I've just been very, very busy that last month. I had a very, very busy work schedule with my all my overseas flying to Asia, as well as my annual. It's kind of like death and taxes every year around the time. I say April's the cruelest month. T.S. Eliot, March is the cruelest month for me. Just springtime, I have all my yearly licensing exams for work to do as a flight attendant. For my license, all the security and safety exams and drills and blah blah blah. So every year it's the same thing. I just get like super stressed out. So I couldn't record a class at that time. So I did one, and then we were just visiting my mom in Arizona, which was lovely. So I was gonna record a class there. At either in the horse trailer or at my mom's little casita, but it just wasn't going to work out. I wanted to sort of do it outside with the cacti and stuff like that in the sun, but it was very, very windy, very noisy on the ranch where she is. And I thought, this will end up being a bit of a wreck. So I just waited. So here I am back in Vancouver before I go to work to fly to Korea tomorrow. And I'm just normally, I'm recording the other. I'm just sort of giving you a little bit of a explanation here. So my roommate's away, so I'm just here in the dining room with the beautiful floral mural that she painted. She's very artistic, so very loud colors. My age, I feel like it's kind of like a 1960s sort of or 70s sort of psychedelic background here. Almost like kids show I grew up with, like HR Puff and stuff or something like that. Anyway, so I guess a bit of a funny setting for class this week. So continuing on, the class will be, just before we get into our meditation now, continuation of discussion around Buddhist ethics, sort of a introduction to vows and commitments. And so last time class we went over was the different refuge commitments that you take, as well as the benefits of taking and keeping these refuge vows. So that was sort of your basic refuge vows. It's kind of like we're talking about the foundational small scope or Hinayana path, the basis for our Buddhist path or Buddhism in general. So we're talking about ethics on that level. So, and on top of that, we're building sort of the temple of our higher vows for Bodhisattva, the Mahayana sort of Bodhisattva vows and commitments. And then eventually the Vajrayana or diamond vehicle commitments and tantric vows that you take. So the most important ones, because this is like the foundation for our house, is working on our refuge commitments and the refuge vows and so forth. And in particular, today we're going to talk about the pratimoksha or freedom or liberation vows that we take, the sort of 5 lay vows that we take as a layperson. And they're also basis for any ordination vows that you take if you want to become a monk or a nun or some kind of yogi or yogini or nagpa, nagma, something of the sort. So that's what we'll talk about today. And the pratimoksha vows, we'll get into a little bit of discussion of course, the 10 non-virtuous actions. And then the 10 virtuous actions being not doing the 10 non-virtues and sort of doing their opposite. Sort of the 10 virtues would be sort of eliminating the negativity there and cultivating positive vows or mental attributes. So we'll talk about that. Okay, so just getting started now, have a little brief meditation here. This week, we'll start with the Heart Sutra. Just switch my glasses here. Reading glasses here. Okay. Homage to perfection, wisdom, the Blessed Mother. Thus I've heard at one time the Blessed One was dwelling in Vajrayana Mass with Malcher's Mountain, gathered great assembly of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. That time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the concentration of countless aspects of phenomenon called profound illumination. That time also, Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of the Great Being, was looking perfectly at the practice of profound perfection of wisdom, looking perfectly also at the 5 aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Then through the power of Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of the Great Being, how should a son of the luminous train who wishes to engage the practice of profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of the Great Being, replied to Venerable Shariputra as follows. Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of the lineage wishes to engage in the practice of profound perfection of wisdom should look perfectly like this. Subsequently, looking perfectly and correctly also at the 5 aggregates being empty of inherent existence, form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, and form is also not other than emptiness. Likewise, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Rinpoche, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, having no characteristics, do not produce and do not cease. They have no defilement, no separation from defilement. They have no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Rinpoche, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mentality, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no tactile object, no phenomenon. There is no I element and so forth up to no mentality element, and also up to no element of consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so forth up to no aging and death, no exhaustion of aging and death. Likewise, there's no suffering, origin, cessation, or path, no exalted awareness, no attainment, also no non-attainment. Therefore, Rinpoche, because there's no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide in the perfection of wisdom. Their minds have no obstructions and no fear. Passing on or beyond perversity, they attain the final nirvana. Also, all Buddhas reside perfectly in the three times, having relied upon the perfection of wisdom, became manifest, complete Buddhas in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the equal and unequaled mantra, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, since it's not false, should be known as the truth. Mantra of perfection of wisdom is proclaimed, Tayata Gada Gada Paragata Parasamkari Bodhisoha. Rinpoche Bodhisattva, great being, should train the profound perfection of wisdom like this. Then the Blessed One arose to that concentration, said to Sparvalkshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, that he'd spoken well. Good Sunderland, just like that, since it's like that, just as you have revealed, in that way the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra, Sparvalkshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, the entire circle of disciples, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, demigods, and spirits, were delighted and highly praised what had been spoken by the Blessed. Okay, so let's just take a moment to do our meditation here. Just ask for blessings and to create merit and to sort of virtue energy and purify negative energy and delusions in our mind. And most of all, take refuge and generate bodhicitta for our proper intentions. So again, visualizing ourselves seated in a wide open space, ground like lapis lazuli, beautiful blue sky above us, and ourselves surrounded by all sentient beings. So mother on our left, father on our right, people we love the most as support behind us, people we like the least have issues with in front of us as objects of our prayers and compassion. And moving out from there, all sentient beings of the 6 realms of cyclic existence, all the different world systems. So all human beings without exception with us, all animals from all different ecosystems, different living beings in the natural realm, spirit beings from the spirit world, celestial beings from the god and demigod realms, and beings in lower rebirth states, so hell beings, hungry ghost beings, so just kind of like the entire sentient being families here with us. Those closest to us are closest to us right now in the little circle, and moving up to ones we don't know. But the point is, as everyone's interconnected, we're all here together to practice together. And visualizing in front of us in the sky like a beautiful sun, made out of pure light or energy, is the light being, our teacher and founder of Buddhism, Buddha Shakyamuni. So he's made out of golden energy or light, wearing 3 robes of a monk in lotus position. And he's holding his left hand and begging both in the soul nectar, and right hand is in the subduing mudra, touching the earth. And now his heart is his higher angelic form, the Sambhogakaya form, of the divine couple Vajradhara and Vajradhatushvari. And their beautiful sapphire blue bodies in sexual embrace, sort of late teens, sort of young age, wearing crowns, jewelry and so forth, beautiful silk clothes. And he has a bell in his left hand, a Vajra scepter, Dorji in his right. She has a skull cup with medicinal nectar in her left and curved chopper knife cleaver in her right. So just keeping it simple today. And again, we're just visualizing it this way to sort of show the origin of all these vows in Buddha's teachings and all the sutras. And the 3 baskets here that we're going to talk about, sort of the foundational three higher trainings. The basis of Buddhism, of course, is ethics or moral discipline, concentration through meditation, and finally, Vipassana, or superior seeing or wisdom realizing emptiness. These are the three sort of baskets here. This is usually classed as Vinaya, the Sutras, and the Abhidharma. So just connecting right to Buddha Shakyamuni, all these vows and commitments and precepts come from his teachings. So taking refuge, again, from our hearts here, and just even thinking about the refuge vows we take and what we try to live by doing refuge here. I know sentient beings, to achieve enlightenment, both refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I know sentient beings, and to achieve enlightenment, both refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I know sentient beings, to achieve enlightenment, refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I'm generating the awakening mind here. Intention to reach full awakening or full enlightenment, to become a Buddha for the benefit of all. In other words, to lead all other sentient beings without exception to Buddhahood as well. Become just like us. We say through the virtues we collect by giving other perfections, may we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Through the virtues we collect by giving other perfections, may we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Through the virtues we collect by giving other perfections, may we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Four measurable minds here: love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Sort of opening our heart up. May everyone be happy. May everyone be free from misery. May no one ever be separated from their happiness. And may everyone have equanimity, free from hatred and attachment. Okay, 7 limb practice to make our practice Buddhist here. And the first one being prostration, showing respect and sort of love and devotion here, making prostrations, just even from our heart here. To Buddha Shakyamuni, to the merit field, him representing the 3 jewels of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and all holy beings, all light beings, all of our teachers. Again, just 3 prostrations of body, speech, and mind. So we just feel like making prostrations, us and all sentient beings, singing praises, dharanis, mantras, and so forth. And again, mind of devotion, or sort of like Guru Yoga to Buddha Shakyamuni, or Bhakti Yoga, devotion. Offering just from our heart, opening up generosity, flowing forth beautiful flowers in all directions, or candles, or lights, as an offering to Buddha, and benefiting all beings around, spreading beautiful light and beauty for all beings. It's a way of opening our hearts and opening everyone else's heart up here. Confession and rejoicing. So again, the 2 poles here: acknowledging, standing up, owning, taking stock, declaring kind of all of our negativities and shortcomings and mistakes, failures and flaws. Sort of standing up and sort of being authentic, almost in an existential way, accepting the consequences of our choices, our bad habits, seeing that they're us, we are them, and that we can outgrow them and let them go. Sort of self-educate, sort of transcend all of these things and self-overcome. And again, rejoice on the work we have done, all the virtues and good energy and goodness in the world and other people, especially of all holy beings. From our heart, just sending up beautiful white lion throne, sort of square lion throne, and an 8-spoked golden Dharma chakra, Dharma wheel, to Buddha Shakyamuni, and just say, please always, Buddha Shakyamuni, who is appearing in our lives as our teachers, our Buddhist teachers, in particular, our main Buddhist teacher of this life, emanating as that person, and also emanating as all the teachers in the world, Buddhist teachers and books and so forth, and temple statues and so forth. Just always setting that connection with them. Please remain in my life. Please always be available to me. And please always teach me. Help me keep moving forward on this journey of self-education and self-overcoming. So never give up on me. Always keep guiding me, giving me personal advice in the Dharma. And now dedicating everything for the welfare of all beings. Maybe for the enlightenment of all sentient beings, everything we do. Okay, holding beautiful mandala or purified universe at our heart here. A little Vedic universe if you want. You can have that symbol, or just all beautiful things held in our hands at our heart level. An open heart, the sort of last open-hearted offering we're making. Here, kind of like circle of reciprocity here, circle of giving, the merit field. All the holy beings and light beings give us positive energy and teach us and bless us, and we offer back goodness and beauty and love and devotion to them. It sort of goes back and forth, like a big wheel. So opening our heart up, whole purified universe in our hands, held at our heart, we offer up to Buddha Shakyamuni. Holy ground sprinkled with perfume and spread with flowers. Great land, four lands, sun and moon, seen as a Buddha land and offered thus. All beings enjoy such pure lands. Send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious teachers. Om Edambura Namamala Kavanoti Om. And with this, just like sunlight, golden energy and nectar is coming down, purifying us, sort of bringing us up a level, powering us up, spiritual energy, just like sunlight dispelling coldness and shadows of our ego and our suffering. The dreary, dark day or rainy day, the clouds part and the sun comes out, warming everything up, drying everything out, perking everybody up, everybody's mood. Same thing here. So this transcendent sun of Buddha nature. And request from our heart. Please, Buddha Shakyamuni, whose mind is synthesis of all Buddha jewels, speech is synthesis of all Dharma jewels, and mind is synthesis. So I'm sorry, I get this, but Buddha Shakyamuni, please, whose body is synthesis of all Sangha jewels, speech is synthesis of all Dharma jewels, and mind is synthesis of all Buddha jewels. That's it. Buddha jewel. Am I getting this right? Okay, but the body is the Buddha jewel, speech is the Dharma jewel. No, body is the Sangha jewel, speech is the Dharma jewel, and mind is the Buddha jewel. Sorry about that getting confused here. So we can just feel that Buddha Shakyamuni as body, holy body, is just like the Arya Sangha for us, taking refuge. It represents the whole embodiment of the teachings in our lives and in our community, in our temples and in the world. Buddha Shakyamuni's speech is the Dharma jewel, all the texts and books and teachings and mantras and dharanis and so forth that we hear. And mind is all the Buddha jewels, just the Dharmakaya mind, the mind realizing emptiness and being able to teach that in any way that's necessary, or any way that's useful and relevant to all sentient beings, wherever they're at, whatever situation, wherever they are. That's the Dharmakaya mind. So even when we do the three recognitions sort of in tantric practice, we say just like everything, all the energy around you in your experience, sort of all objects of cognition, that's all like the body of the Buddha. Every sound that you hear is the holy speech of the Buddha. It's just like a mantra, whether that's a car engine or the wind through the leaves, or birds song or melody, music that you hear on the radio, whatever, that's all like a mantra or dharani. And then any thoughts you have is an expression of the enlightened mind of Buddha, Buddha mind, Dharmakaya mind. Whatever thoughts you have, they all rise and fade into emptiness. So good thoughts, bad thoughts, beautiful thoughts, ugly thoughts, all sort of divine wisdom. So just please grant us blessings that we be able to really realize that in our own lives. So saying this Buddha Shakyamuni gets really, really small, about the size of an M&M candy or so. You can just feel that even it. So it's like a golden, sort of a golden nugget, and then the blue nugget almost like is a little bit of lapis. So it's almost like a little pendant or something, a little necklace, gold with a lapis center to it, being Vajradhara and Vajradhatu Ishvari. This whole sort of one unit, almost like a Kinder egg with a little Kinder Surprise or the toy in the middle of it. Just so in the unity of Sutra and Tantra here, and Nirmanakaya and Sambhogakaya aspects of the Buddha comes to the crown of our head and slowly descends to our heart. And once it reaches our heart, it sort of becomes one with us, just with our heart, our soul, our mind, our root mind. Buddha's mind and our mind become one. And just sit in that vastness, in that peace, in that goodness. Okay, so just coming out of meditation here, just a short meditation. Just feel all that vastness and goodness is integrated into our mind, into our vision. Okay, so just looking at material for class this week here, this notebook. I'm sure for some of you, you're going to know a lot of this stuff anyway, but we'll just look at it. So, okay, so these are the main, we've talked about the sort of refuge vows and commitments last week that we do, as well as the benefits of taking them. And of course, once you know the benefits or recite the benefits to yourself of them, it sort of motivates you to keep those vows and commitments, because you see the result. You're sort of being told, kind of, I guess it's kind of almost like a contractor being sold on something in a nice way. It's just, if you do this, let's say you get your membership at the gym, you go every day, you're going to be healthy and fit or something. It's the same thing, these benefits. If you follow these vows and commitments, these precepts, they will produce these good effects in your life, sort of on a practical, pragmatic level. So now looking at the main Moksha or freedom vows here that we take as sort of as a Buddhist. When you take refuge and take these commitments, you're sort of saying that you're going to take these Moksha vows. So of course, they're called liberation vows, Moksha. Moksha means freedom. So the freedom vows, why are they freedom vows? It's because they're the key for you freeing yourself up in your life. There, if you observe these vows, you will create more freedom for yourself by creating good karma, by not creating the bad karma. So you're kind of like untying all these sort of knots. You're always tying yourself up on these knots by creating the bad karma of indulging in these sort of 5 negative activities. So conversely, like if you're always kind of like running ahead in quicksand and sinking, oh my goodness. And then you're told, oh, this part of the quicksand pool, it looks the same, but right underneath the surface is actually concrete. You won't step it, just step on it, and you'll be able to step out of the quicksand. You step on, it's like, wow, I freed myself from the quicksand. I'm no longer, and then it's like I can get out of the quicksand pool. It's like for the first time, uh, my first teacher again, Kelsing Tarsha, what he said is that he was teaching as Lojong at the time, but he said just understanding karma and mind transformation and paying attention to vows and concepts. It's a great, I always remember this. I was about 24 years old or something. He said, this will be sort of, you will see, this will be the first time that you'll really be free in your life. You will really, for the first time, find freedom. You won't be always sort of a victim of yourself, your bad habits and all the bad energy ripening on you. And you'll have more and more freedom, more and more space will start to open up around you, and you will be able to make better choices, good karma, and create more positive energy in your life. So that's what we really mean about freedom vows. Like, it's the first time you're finding freedom, creating this sort of free space around you, good karma. And so you're going to be heading towards the ultimate freedom, getting out of jail, which is getting out of samsara. So this is almost the equivalent of getting out of your cell. Then you'll be getting out of your cell block, and then eventually, to the main part of the prison, then out the front doors, then down the street, you've left the prison. Eventually, you've left samsara. But it all starts here. This is where you're actually leaving your cell. Someone's giving you the key to open the door of your cell block or the cage. You're like a little bird in the cage. You can't get out. Someone's with your wing, you push open the door, you get out. Now I got to get out of the house. Once I get out of the house, I can fly away in the sky. I'm a free bird. But the key is to get out of the house of samsara. I first have to get out of the cage of these 5 negative actions here. So, of course, what are they? There is 5 primary, and actually this is more from a Mahayana point of view. They add 4 secondary, which would mean sort of ending up being sort of what they call the 8 Mahayana precepts. So these, if you take all 8, this is oftentimes they do these taking the 8 Mahayana precepts in terms of doing a Mahayana precept day that you can take, usually done traditionally in Tibet on the full moon or new moon, as a way of restoring your vows. Often this is done with, it's called Nungne, or often done as a 2-day practice of creating a lot of merit and purifying negativity by having a 2-day fast. The practice usually done around 1,000 arm Chenmo, 1,000 arm Avalokiteshvara or Kuan Yin. And so the first day you will have one meal, which is right before lunchtime. And then after that, you just have water, maybe sort of watered down juice or something you kind of can't eat. Then the second day, you don't eat anything at all. You just drink water. And it's considered to have an enormous amount of merit to do this practice of Nungne. But what you do for that is take the 8 Mahayana precepts. So this can be done at any time. Anytime you want to take them, you take them every day if you want. But usually, traditionally, they will take, people take them on the new moon and on the full moon. So what are the 4 primary ones? We'll talk about the 8, like I say, basically breaking it down to the 5 Pratimoksha vows, and then we'll have the extra little ones put on top to create a package. So the main ones, of course, the 5 Pratimoksha vows, the 5 what they call lifetime lay vows, which means you take them as a Buddhist and you never give them up, right to the end of this life. You're creating all this karma to take to begin the future, of course, in your future lives. But you're doing, these are the 5 main vows. It's almost like I can't remember if it's sort of the 5 main things you do as a Muslim, where you pray, I think it's 5 times a day. Pardon me if I got this wrong, but you take care of people that, like widows and poor people that are sick. You vow to go on the Hajj or pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina once in your life. It's the same time. That's what makes you a Muslim, for instance, observing those precepts. It's the same thing here as a Buddhist. You have to observe these 5 precepts. Now, you can make mistakes, not do them, fail, whatever. But the point is you're trying. If you don't try at all and don't take these 5, you can't run around telling everybody you're a Buddhist. They can kind of call you on it and say, well, what kind of Buddhist are you if I see you doing these 5 bad things all the time. I know enough about Buddhism to know you shouldn't be doing them. So that's kind of like the sort of general Pratimoksha freedom vows, lay precepts we do. So what are they? Of course, you've probably heard them all before. So number 1 is killing. No killing. In particular, the real vow is not killing another human being. But of course, it's sort of generalized to sort of a real ethic of nonviolence, of not killing things. 2, not stealing, which is basically the rough definition is not taking anything not given of noticeable value, and or oftentimes taking anything that's not freely given, so by permission. So anything that's not by permission given to you and you just take without asking or something is a form of stealing by this. Lying, which is, of course, saying what's not true, and so forth. In particular, they say not lying about the Dharma. So this would be giving false answers about the Dharma. In particular, lying about yourself, claiming you have realizations, like you've seen emptiness, you have all these high spiritual qualities, like you're a bit of a quote unquote bullshitter about your practice or about your experiences in the Dharma. That's considered like the real worst part of lying, is to lie about your spiritual practice or lying about Buddhism. Because of course you're corrupting the Buddhism or the religion for other people. Then sexual activity in particular, so negative sexual activity, particularly adultery, is seen as the one, or having sexual intimacy with sort of what they say, the wrong people at the wrong time, okay? And then the final one, which makes the 5th, is not taking intoxicants. So usually in the old days, from Buddhist time and so forth onwards, it's not drinking alcohol. But this is sort of, of course, we can talk about drugs or anything. So when we talk about an intoxicant, is that anything that takes away your mindfulness, that takes away your presence of mind, your judgment, and so forth. And of course, the reason for that is once you are intoxicated, you can't be mindful of your ethical behavior, which is the foundation for the 2 other higher trainings of concentration and wisdom realizing emptiness. So if you've gotten rid of your ethics through your lack of mindfulness, then your whole practice starts to come crashing down. If you're not aware, you're not present, you're not kind of in the moment watching your actions of body, speech, and mind, you can't observe karma, and then you can break all your vows. So each of these 5, we could spend 20 years on going on all the different aspects of this. I'll go a little bit more detail in them here. Anyways, but that's the sort of the basic 5 right there. And I just wanted to sort of give you a story about intoxication. The one they give to monks, and of course it's a sexist example, so we can change it around and stuff, but the one they always say is that there's some young handsome monk and he's begging, and then there's this beautiful woman, she's a bad person or something, I don't know, but she says, "Oh, Mr. Monk, could you come into my house, and I can't remember what it is, but I've got 3 things I want to make you a chicken dinner, kill the chicken that I have in the backyard and make you a chicken stir fry or something. And I made my own homemade wine, and I think you're really attractive. So maybe I could be your girlfriend. We can have sex tonight." So of course the monk says, no, of course I can't do this. This is all 3 vows. I can't do any of these. I don't want to kill anything or have something killed specifically for me. In particular, because I'm an ordained person, I can't have anything killed for me, for my sustenance directly like this. And of course, no intoxicants. I'm a monk, I can't be drinking alcohol. And of course, I'm supposed to be celibate, I can't be having sex with somebody. So then she's, of course, being the bad person of the story, right? She's like, the patriarchal world here. Oh, please do these things for me. No. And then she says, "Okay, well, you're not going to have sex with me. You're not going to let me kill the chicken, make a chicken stir fry. Can you at least try my homemade wine?" And of course the monk says, "Well, okay, if it sort of gets you off my back and I'm doing you a favor and I'm honoring, you as a person or whatever, no worries." And of course he takes a little shot of the wine. Of course, he's a young monk, he's never had alcohol, goes right to his head, or he knows it. He's drinking the whole bottle of wine, then of course kills a chicken, they have a nice dinner, and then he ends up spending the night with this woman, wakes up the next morning going, "Oh my God, what happened?" So of course this is a fictitious example, but why they show that, and of course we can cast this as another thing where it's like I have to do this big thing for my teachers at the temple, and it's like my stoner friends want me to come over and smoke weed and not go to the temple today to do stuff, to have this big healing ceremony or big thing with my Tibetan lamas for the public or whatever, blah blah blah, or open this new stupa or something. And they said, dude, come on over and play video games all day, don't go to your boring temple stuff. And like, no man, I can't do that, I have to do this. And they're like, look, come on over, like at least come and smoke weed. No, please take one toke. Okay, I start smoking weed or whatever like this, and then I get high, and it's like, oh, let's play video games and eat chips. And it's like, oh my God, it's 9 o'clock at night, where did the time go? And I missed the whole event. Like, you can tell this, make this story up. There's all sorts of stories this way. Basically, it's the idea that once you lose your mindfulness with intoxication, it's very easy to break all your other vows. And so that's why this one is seen, like, things that intoxicate you are seen as very, very serious things, because once you're intoxicated, you're on drugs, alcohol, maybe cigarettes, some other kinds of stimulants or whatever, medication, whatever, and you're not yourself, so to speak. You can break your vows. Or in terms of, I always heard with Roman law, that if you were ever intoxicated and committed a crime or a non-virtue, this is what friends taught me who were studying classics 30 years ago when I was in university, but they said in Roman law, you would be prosecuted nonetheless, because they said that's what you really wanted to do. So if I get drunk and rob a bank, I can't say, look, I was under the influence. It wasn't me robbing the bank or robbing the 7-Eleven. I was just totally high. The Roman, whatever, military court or something to say, well, Matthew, deep down, you have always wanted to rob that 7-Eleven. You were just holding yourself back. You had some degree of moral strength that was washed away once you were high. Then you got to sort of be yourself. Your inhibitions went down. You could act out your secret wish to rob the 7-Eleven. And so, in other words, you're even twice as guilty now that you sort of claim that sort of fake excuse that, that wasn't me, I didn't mean it. No, you really meant it. And that's why it's kind of like a Freudian gotcha moment there. But you can kind of see with intoxicants, of course, people's inhibitions go with it. And then you can really break these other vows. Okay. So those are the 5 right there, the 5 most important vows. As Buddhists, we have to do them. And then you can sprinkle the other 5 on there to make it sort of the complete 8 precepts of Mahayana precepts here, which is, if you take these sort of extra vows, it's not to sit on luxurious furniture. So of course, what's luxurious furniture? In the old days, they say kind of like a high bed, like the big king or queen size bed. And of course, we've all got nice furniture like that. The idea was that you have to be humble, like a good monk or nun or a good yogi or yogini. So it's living a simple life. So rather than having the big monster king size bed, like some hotels have, like, as a flight attendant stay in these fancy hotels, whatever in Shanghai or something, and it's a king size bed and it's like 5 feet off the ground, and it's like you sink into it. The pillows are gigantic. It's unbelievable. Like you feel like some emperor with his unbelievable bed, right? And oftentimes I always just feel like this is like too much. I don't need this, right? It just feels like a little too luxurious, and almost at times I'm a little ridiculous. Like, who needs a bed this big? Like, I can roll to one side, roll all the way like this. Like sometimes if my wife Christina's coming, we stay in a bed like on a layover. We don't even. It's like you lose the other person. You don't even know where they are at night. Like I could just be like this. It's like, where's the other person? It's like, oh, they're on the other side of the room in this giant bed. So if you're trying to be a humble person and you take this precept, it's like, okay, just a simple bed, like a futon, simple little bed, simple quilt or something. I want to be a humble person. I don't want to be anything special. I want to be sort of humble and modest in my desires. Of course, intoxicants. So I guess that actually the intoxicants one's part of the second. So it'd be the first 4, which is sexual activity, stealing, killing, and lying. And then intoxicants would be part of this. This is the way the 8 Mahayana precepts are grouped. Part of the second 4, luxurious furniture. And then they say no dancing, singing, music, garlands, perfumes, jewelry, cosmetics. So again, anything that, again, you have to be humble. I know this ends up always coming as sounding like being some boring religious person. But again, it's the idea of don't lose your mindfulness and get swept away at things. Don't lose your inhibitions. Don't start being, again, you might break your, if you're trying to sort of these precept days where you want to be mindful and stuff, you don't want to get sucked into sexual activity, let's say, which isn't allowed, let's say, when you're taking the 8 Mahayana precepts. So don't get all dolled up and get all ready like you're going out to the nightclub to hook up with someone or something like that. And it's like it's almost like a scent-free environment a little bit. You don't want to sort of overload your senses with stimulation, stimulate your mind, sort of get you fantasizing, get you acting other than yourself. Dancing, singing is kind of like losing mindfulness, getting swept away. Singing and dancing, I guess the equivalent you could add on this is always being on your phone. It's like always checking whatever, Instagram or something like that, scrolling. It's like lack of mindfulness, not being in the present moment. And then, of course, the 8th one is not eating after noon, which is that this impedes meditation. So it's the classic thing, as you know, like especially I think in a lot of the Theravada Buddhist countries like Sri Lanka and Thailand, Cambodia and stuff, they have this with the monks. Of course, you don't eat after noon. That's sort of the cutoff. And the reason is, if you've done retreat and you have a big lunch and then you go and you're getting teachings in the afternoon, listening to teachers teach, or you try and meditate, you're just digesting all that food. It's heavy. You're falling asleep. Your mind's completely dull. There's about 2 or 3 hours there from about noon till 3 where it's completely shot, your meditation. So by not eating after noon, like having that as a cutoff, you're able to save sort of the afternoon hours, about 6 hours there, where, just like your circadian rhythms are coming down a little bit. They call that water time in Taoism between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m., where it's like you go into more a restoration period in your nervous system and you sort of get a little bit quieter. It's kind of like an afternoon siesta or nap. You don't want to get your mind all clouded like that. You want to be sharp so you can keep on meditating. So there you go. That's that. Now again, we could spend like a year on each one of these vows and what they are. And so you can look into this, and I think I actually let me see if I can find this quickly, which is a lot of the new there's when you see these vows, each tradition has its own way of understanding them. Some are a little bit liberal, some a little bit more conservative. And also some are a little bit more modern in their understanding of these. Let's just see. In some, it's really, okay, so I'm just wanting to see here. There's different ways of sort of parsing this. One thing I do like is if you read Thich Nhat Hanh's take on sort of the vows of nonviolence, he has sort of an interesting way. He sort of added some ones to this. Trying to see if we can find this here. This is sort of social. Let me just, anyway, I'll just try and see if I can find this here. But he has, he adds stuff to this. Here are the 14 precepts, maybe this, I'm trying to remember how he did it here. Mindfulness training. Yeah, so I'll just give you an example here. You can do your own research on this. But he adds to, like, of course, you do these 5, and then he adds a lot more to it. Like he'll say, first mindfulness training is openness, then non-attachment to views, freedom of thought, awareness of suffering, compassionate, healthy living, taking care of your anger, dwelling happily in the present moment, true community communication, truthful, loving speech, protecting, nourishing the Sangha, right livelihood. So he'll do all this stuff, generosity, reverence for life, true love. Like you can look at his stuff and how he'll say that even with these vows, you can expand on them and add a lot more to them, sort of break them down. So it's also, like Geshe Michael talks about this, and he says that when they talk about it's almost like concentric circles of a vow when you're ordained. So let's say killing. So let's say the ultimate form of killing is you actually kill somebody, you stab someone, run them over in the car, shoot them, whatever, do something terrible and kill them. But what would it like? There's other things that you might be doing that might sort of slide into that, like grievous bodily harm, physically assaulting someone, hitting them in anger. Like it's kind of like a bullseye, like the sort of outer rings, they're not killing. But if you get onto a streak, kind of like a streak of energy, it is kind of like they always call this kind of like slippery slope argument in ethics. And it's not necessarily, it's just like, oh, watching violent cartoons makes you're a little kid, you watch the old violent Bugs Bunny cartoons, then you're going to run out and rob a bank or kill somebody. We all know that that's not the case. But at the same time, in Buddhism, if mind is what they say it is formless and clear cognizant, so it's a sheer openness. Whatever you put in the mind is what it becomes. So if you start filling your mind with lots of violence, you can start seeing the mind becomes sort of a violent thing, becomes tainted by that kind of thing. And so you have to be really careful. Just these, you're not going to be in the middle of killing, but when you start sort of, it's like a bullseye, the outer rings. Well, if you're not mindful and careful, you can start moving more into the middle, right? I mean, I've heard this say this with serial killers too. They start by killing animals and then they be killing people. I mean, I'm not too sure. I'm not a criminal psychologist or something. But you see the idea. So it's like having proper boundaries. So you might want to, if the whole point of killing is like trying to live a non-violent life. I mean, this is even an argument for vegetarianism, for instance. Like this is a big debate. And a lot of times we have big debates, but these are not laws. They're not laws passed down by God on the tablets of Mount Sinai. They're not laws that you break and hence are judged by an external agent like God or the angels or someone else or even your community. These are what are called vows or precepts. So it's kind of like it's a self-perfection rule of behavior you're applying to yourself. And so this is a little thing like Michel Foucault talked about ethics, famous French philosopher. He talked about in terms of self-empowerment in the sense that it's rules or styles of regiment you're applying to yourself to create a self. So that's what these sort of ethics are like, is of course they have a direct impact on the world, on ourselves and other people, but they're an art of living, so to speak. There's something you're doing to have a less violent life, a less selfish, attached, negative, suffering life, and at the same time, hence, because of that, promoting a more positive, spiritual, happy life for yourself and for others. So you can see that, like with the concentric circles, what does it mean not to kill? Right? What does it mean not to kill? I have to watch that I don't kill things. I don't sort of on different levels. And I remember this one nun telling Christina years ago, there's different ways of killing. You can kill someone's self-esteem. You can kill someone's happiness. You can kill their joy. You can kill their faith. You can kill their belief. There's different ways of killing, not just killing a person or killing an animal. Like try not to kill bugs. Famous beat poet Gary Schneider said that there's so much power in not killing when you don't kill something. In other words, whatever, there's a cockroach or a spider, I'm not going to kill you. It's a big inconvenience. I have to catch you. They have to take you outside. But there's so much power in doing that when you see that most of the killing in the world is out of convenience. Like, I want something, whatever, like figuratively, and this other being is in the way of my desire or need. And so either they have something I want or they're in the way for something I need to get. And so I'm going to kill them. You are bugging me. You're gross. I don't like you like a bug or whatever. I want this. You're in the way. Get out of my way and I kill you. So you see the idea of actually preserving life or the power of not killing, the statement that makes, or the energy or the truth power that has. Same thing with respecting property, respecting not stealing. Just imagine not taking what's not offered. So what isn't offered? Like this means they always have the example of taking office supplies at work. I mean, anything. This is the thing where they tell monks and nuns or people in religious community not to use the temple or donations as your personal bank, where it's just like, oh, I'm taking, this was bought, the cookies for the puja. Well, I'm going to take half of them home for my kids' lunch, or it's for me. I'm going to eat the cookies. The tea at the temple's for me, even though it's the community. I'm going to use it every time I come in. The donations are for me. I have to run an errand for the temple. Like, you have to be really careful. That's technically not yours. No one's giving it to you. You can't act that it's your own private bank, your own private stuff. So imagine respecting property to such an extent in the world where you don't take what's not freely offered. So think how much people steal. And again, you can steal all sorts of stuff, steal people's energy, steal their happiness, take all sorts of things from people without respecting it, without being asked. Lying, obviously the concentric circles. It's not just, the classic lying where it's just like saying what's not true, whatever. What we can just, you can use your imagination, just out like a total liar, total fib. But think about exaggerating something, even for a comic effect, or to spice up a story you're telling someone, or gossiping. I think Thich Nhat Hanh says, like, don't say anything unless you know it's true. Most of the time, we don't know something's true when we're talking Hollywood gossip, or politics, or family stuff, or whatever. People exaggerate or say, oh, I heard from so-and-so's uncle's neighbor saw this, blah, blah, blah. And you're saying it technically, okay, it's not deliberately lying, but it's probably not true. You don't know it's true. So imagine having that kind of thing where you have such powerful speech that you only say what you know is true, that you can trust, that there's some kind of evidence in your own experience, or it's been proven to you, there's some kind of warrant for your belief. That makes something very, very powerful for your speech. Not exaggerating things, not making stuff up, not fantasizing about stuff, being just really, really clear about stuff. So there you go for lying. And again, we talked about intoxicants. Think about intoxicants, all the things that intoxicate, anything that takes you out of the present moment. Like Jung says, a demon is anything that distracts you. And that's, of course, a definition of Mara in Buddhism too, of course, right? So what's intoxicating? Well, all sorts of stuff's intoxicating. I mean, we might be saying, well, at least I'm not a crack addict like that, but person I know, or that homeless person, or I don't drink, I'm a Buddhist, I'm a pure person. Hey, we get distracted all the time by stuff, just social media, being on the internet, checking emails, intoxicating by wasting time gossiping, playing video games, watching movies, being on Netflix all the time, shopping, smoking, or what. Like, there's so many different ideas, that basic things that take you out of the present moment. So Blaise Pascal, one of the great French philosophers of the 1600s, I always recommend his book Pensées, or Thoughts, which was the other title was Apology for Christianity. It's a whole series of aphorisms of a book he was going to write and never got around to it. He had all little cutout, almost like Wittgenstein did. Like, he had little cutout aphorisms, I think, in a shoebox, and they published it. And it's incredible. But he said that human beings are kind of like fundamentally in absence, that he's one of the first guys to posit the idea that desires a negativity, like Hegel and Freud. And so this idea that people have insatiable desire. So because of that, they're in a state of perpetual dissatisfaction. Of course, this is very Buddhist, like this is dukkha. So how do they deal with that dissatisfaction? He says that infinite hole can only be filled by an infinite thing, which is God, the love of God, because he's a Catholic, he's a Christian. But what he said is, until we get to that point, what do? We live a life of diversion. So he's the famous one that says all the problems in the world come from the fact that we can't sit still alone in a room, which of course nowadays is impossible. Everywhere you look, there's a screen to entertain you. It is kind of like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, where you never, because of the, like I'm looking here at the computer, or on YouTube or whatever, you never have to be alone with yourself. You can always be pulled out of yourself by diversion. So he gives the example in the 1600s, in the 30 Years' War. What do people do? They travel to faraway countries. They go fight in a war. They play craps and card games. They go hunting. They hunt foxes. Like, he gives all the 16th century examples. They play ball or whatever, or field hockey or whatever they played in the 1600s in France. But you see that, whatever, 400 or 500 years later, people are exactly the same. It's just, and even they're doing the same kind of things. People still run around traveling and whatever, and play games and stuff like that to distract themselves. So intoxication, when you look at it that way, we're always intoxicated at that point. Like samsara is an intoxication when you see that. So saying one of my 5 vows is, I am not going to intoxicate myself, that's a pretty big vow to take. And I'm just like any other dummy. I've got a Facebook account, I've got Instagram, I scroll all sorts of stupid stuff, whatever. I'm on Amazon looking at books, and it's the same thing. Hey, I'm not meditating on emptiness. I'm sort of stuck in the whole samsaric matrix like everyone else. And again, can I sit still? Can I be in the present moment? Can I not have that perpetual burning dissatisfaction or dukkha or loneliness or yearning to be happy because I have this existential angst? And of course, Pascal said that nullity is like death. I mean, this is why, Martin Heidegger says that the foundation of desire is death anxiety, this nothingness that's like death. We have all these things. And that's why nowadays you never have to deal with death anxiety or existential angst, because you can just literally, where they want to have, what is it, neural net or something, or put the internet right in your brain, you can scroll in front of your eyeballs 24/7. You'll never have to be alone in a room at that point. You'll never be alone. You'll just be intoxicated. But that's sad. In a lot of ways, you're basically saying that the only way to, like all these great psychoanalysts say, is that we can't handle reality, right? Reality is too painful. So we need a fantasy element, some kind of mediation, some fantastic element in the realm of the imaginary, right? But it's basically saying that the only way I could live this life is to drug myself, So Buddhism is like, what happens when we don't drug ourselves, when we're in the present moment? Ironically, that emptiness we feel is a fullness, right? Because the emptiness of the interconnectedness of all beings, emptiness has conventional reality in it, within it, makes conventional reality possible. So that emptiness is a wholeness or a fullness if we can trust it. But if we're in the intoxicated entertainment diversion point of view, that emptiness is terrifying. It's a death anxiety. And again, it's the death of the inherently existent ego, which doesn't exist anyway. So this is kind of the tragic quality of the human condition there. And of course, the final one, which I always notice, is we don't talk about, like I always noticed, this is always the taboo, is talking about sex, but really, just like any good thinker or poet, sex is the basis of life. It's an old Taoist saying where they say, you are the product of sex. You're here in this world, the root of what they call the karma dhatu, the desire realm, because you had parents that had sex, and here you are. You got a nice human body to practice dharma with. So sex really is at the basis of everything, and it's very important. But what is sexual misconduct? And of course, this changes, and this is one we could talk about for forever. Like, it would actually be an interesting conversation that you could do class after class after class of what is sexual misconduct. I've got that big book. I'm only halfway through, mind you. I think it's by Daniel Kozort. I don't think it's by Donna Lopez, on Buddhist sexual ethics. It's a big hardcover book about this thing. It's absolutely fascinating. Scholarly book, maybe a little boring to some people, but I suggest it, because what you get now is this sort of very modern, contemporary, politically correct, nice definition of don't hurt anybody sexually. But again, the devil's in the details. Everybody says, I never hurt anybody sexually. What are you talking about? But it's all about the details. Like when we talk about all the other vows, these vows, we all have to get done. What does it mean not to kill? What does it mean not to lie? So it's the same thing of how do we not hurt people in an intimate relationship, an intimate space. So in the old days, they would say stuff like, if you look at the old vows, it's like oral sex is sexual misconduct, homosexuality is sexual misconduct. No one thinks that anymore. Why did they think that? You have to historicize everything and see, why was that bad years ago? Why is it okay now? Does this hurt people? Pragmatically, you have to cash it out. So in that book, the first chapter was on what you really see is that Buddha Shakyamuni, what he stressed time and time again is what defines sexual misconduct, at least in this specific case that he's arguing it when he's teaching his students, is when there's attachment in sex. So that's a hard one because we all have it. But he was saying ultimately the attachment you have to it, the attachment to pleasure, is what leads to suffering for yourself and other people. It leads to the craving, leads to the selfishness, leads to the different forms of violence you get with it. So he was saying that in the end, it's not what you're doing, but how you're doing is the problem. But again, they have it. Like, for instance, being unfaithful to your partner, for instance, is a big one. Like, you can have an open relationship, maybe that's different. But for most people, a lot of people in certain kinds of relationships, of course, if you do adultery, you have sexual relations or kind of sexual intimacy with someone else's partner, you're disrespecting that other person's partner, for instance. I mean, some of it is historical. I remember in this big book on sexual ethics, he talks about, 2,500 years ago, patriarchal India. Don't, let's say, you wouldn't rape a young woman from another village or something. Why is that bad? Because the woman's father will lose face in terms of the village. They'll be like, well, look what your daughter did, that now you're a bad person, you let that happen, your family is no one. We hear that now and you think, oh my God, that's like a really, what kind of what kind of understanding? I mean, what's the violence is actually towards the woman. It's not like, it's not that it's bad because the guy's disrespected the woman's father. It's bad because he's disrespected and hurt her. But you see that there's, again, these things there's a history, there's a culture and everything. So I always say with this stuff, you have to investigate it. You have to discuss with your community, discuss with yourself. It's hard. And I think why the sexual misconduct vows is a good one to get over is it's so ambiguous, is it really forces you to have a really tough debates and discussions on this with people, because you see it means different things for different people, because people's sensitivities, their past, they can be victims of sexual violence, their family, their culture, their values are all different. So what counts as intimacy, what counts as violence, what counts as sex is very, very different. So at the end of the Vinaya Sutra, and you see all these sexual rules, for instance, were mostly made for the monks and nuns. And it's funny, and you see just like the way human desires, Freud always said, anytime you have a taboo, within the taboo is the loopholes people use to get around it. So you can enjoy breaking the taboo when you're doing it's a very human thing. So, Buddha has all these rules where it's like, okay, monks don't have sex with people. And then it's like, well, don't have sex. I'm not going to get into graphic details, but with different body parts of the person's body, like he defines it very straight. Let's say between a man and woman, it's just like sexual intercourse, and of course all the monks get around that. So then you have to have more rules. And I remember there was an article in Training School of Nine. It was good. Like, you're not allowed to have sex with, let's say, another person dressed as a bat or a cat or something. So like in a costume. So you're not technically a monk. I'm dressed as a bat. The bat's having sex with a woman. It wasn't me, honestly. There's all these sneaky ways people have to get around it. So they always have to bring in these new rules to sort of head people off from sort of like their bad habits and their desires and their drives, right? But at the end of it, what I always love is Buddha says, these rules will change with time, place, and culture, right? So we can't see them as these absolute kind of rules that we have to observe no matter what, because things change, people change. What's okay in India maybe not okay in Japan, or not okay in North America. What was okay or not okay 2,500 years or even 50 years, even 10 years ago, we can see how much our culture has changed in the last 100 years, last 50 years, last 20 years. Things are always changing and permanent. That's why we call them precepts. So I always think we have to have almost a more, what we call almost like a Levinasi, and Emmanuel Levinas, one of my favorite philosophers, understanding of ethics. Like, how do I respect the other as other? In other words, being not just a prop in my world, but as being another subjectivity itself, another person being separate from me, not just an object of my desires, but a real person with needs and dreams and drives and desires separate from you. How do I respect that? How do I not do violence to that? Seeing that we're all interconnected, so we're all stepping on each other's toes. What do I do for this? So this is why Hegel said that, the count, like if actualize the Kantian ethics of categorical imperative, which is treating people as ends, not means. He said, what I always have to do is forgive. I have to ask forgiveness from others, and I have to forgive other people, because we're always, like the Lord's Prayer, trespassing. My trespasses and others trespassing against me. I've trespassed and others they've trespassed. In other words, we're all in each other's face. We're all interconnected. We're all hurting each other. So if I'm trying to live a life of nonviolence, I have to ask forgiveness all the time. There's something lacking in our judgmental times now, where we never want to forgive. We just want to punish people. But the Christian idea of love is forgiveness. And I think that that's a beautiful Buddhist idea. And of course, we could call that letting go. Right? So we have to say, we're always hurting other people. I have to ask people's forgiveness. I've hurt you. I'm sorry. How did I do that? What did I do? Tell me. Like, let's have this discussion. I'm sort of in your debt that way, So, and I like that when we talk about sexual ethics, it ends up being a better discussion of ethics in general, nonviolence, like killing, lying, all of this comes together in sexual ethics, like lying, property, like taking what isn't offered freely, or other people's intimacy with us, killing, lying, stealing, all these things, intoxication, sexual desire being intoxicated. So you see, they're all interconnected this way. So I like it being ambiguous because it means you have to work. If it was just 5 straight rules that were black and white would make it easy, of course, we know it would never work because things are always changing. We don't live in it. If everything's interconnected necessarily, it's a middle way, and so there's no extreme, so it's no black and white. We're in the messy middle. But being in the messy middle means you have to negotiate everything with other people. It means you have to try hard. It means you're always having to learn and to grow, to let things go, to forgive, and to be a better person. In other words, it's the foundation, your ethics, your moral discipline, of the 2 other higher trainings of mindfulness, and ultimately wisdom, realizing and seeing the interconnectedness of all things, the karma of all things. And think about that, because the more ethical I am, the more mindful I get. And I need to be mindful to be ethical in the first place. I have to have an understanding of karma, or action and consequences. So you can see, in other words, to be able to practice ethics. Ethics is all about actions and consequences. So you can even see the 3 higher trainings are completely interconnected that way, right? Okay, let's see here. Well, of course, I might have mentioned it before, that of course, that having a vow of not doing something is more powerful than just randomly not doing it. We've talked about that before. Maybe I was going to leave this. I think I was going to, in the list here, talk a bit about, I'll leave this for next time. It's on the 10 non-virtues. So we'll talk about that because I've actually gone about an hour now. And this is taken from the LamRim, Chenmo, LamRim teachings, where we talk about, of course, expanding this to the 5 lay vows into the 10 non-virtues, which is, of course, the 3 of the body, which is killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. We have 4 for speech. So it's not just lying, but it's also gossip, divisive speech, and hurtful speech. And then of the mind. I mean, that's almost like the intoxicated mind with the 3 root poisons of ignorance, attachment, and anger, being, of course, having the 3 negative mental karmas of wrong view, and sort of the spiteful malice, and then covetousness, or that sort of very sort of driven attachment. So I'm not about the next time, because we'll see how these things create a world. Okay, so I will leave it as a segue to the next class that I'll give on this. I'll try and do this recorded as soon as I can, have a live class soon. Is just when the 5 vows are given to you, they're always presented as negative things. In other words, don't kill, don't steal, do this. So you can just as easy talk about the 5 positive things. So it's not the freedom vows, it's just not freedom from, but freedom for. So freedom from the bad karma of suffering of doing these bad things. In other words, I shouldn't do them. But let's talk about the freedom for. So Isaiah Berlin's 2 ideas of freedom from and freedom for. Normally, again, freedom from all the negative karma of suffering from doing these 5 non-virtues. But let's talk about freedom for. Let's talk about creating positive energy by the freedom for of creating using the 5 Pratimoksha vows as 5 things to do, positive things to do. So in other words, instead of killing, no killing, preserving life, honoring life, seeing life as sacred, saving life, right? Whatever that means, saving that, like respecting lives, living a non-violent life means not just not creating violence, but really sowing peace in the world, sowing solidarity between all sentient beings, sowing, a recognition of interconnection, sowing ethics in general, seeing the other as other. Instead of lying, telling the truth, being honest, always tell the truth. Now, of course, that's difficult. Kenneth Rexroth, one of my favorite poets, always said he'd always say, tell the truth and see what happens, see how long you last in a world of lies, right? Like, that's the hard thing to do, that's the old Croatian expression, tell the truth and then run. But nevertheless, having a life where you speak the truth all the time and honor the truth and tell the truth. Don't tell lies. Don't say what you don't know is being true, but also honor the truth, tell the truth, preserve the truth, spread the truth, whatever that is, as far as you understand, as far as you know in your experience. Um, Sexual misconduct, how about erotic intimacy, proper wholesome intimacy with yourself, with others, for the world, so a loving intimacy. So this is in Taoist arts of love, which you can study. They talk about, it's these sort of old Greek ideas too, like ars erotica, the idea of having an erotic art, like the idea of seeing eroticism as a way of seeing being intimate with all beings, but in a wholesome, nonviolent way. That's something you can do. Instead of being intoxicant, being mindful and present, not diverting yourself. Hardest thing to do nowadays. Not diverting yourself, being able to sit like Zen, sit in the present moment, sit like a mountain, and sit and experience the world. Take it as is rather than how you want it to be. And well, stealing, I guess, would be the other thing, is preserving and respecting other people's property, other people's lives, other people's possessions, other people even as other. See the other as other, which is ultimately what ethics is when we think about it from a categorical imperative, like Kant would say, is to treat others as ends, not means. In other words, as having ends, as having dreams, as having desires, as having values like me. Not as means to my ends, not as means to my values, means to my drives, desires, wishes, but actually as being another 0 point in reality, just like me, being equal like me, another center of the universe, just like I'm a center of the universe. We're all, this I think is one way of understanding Thelema, where the religion of Thelema, where they say, everyone is a star. It's like we all have our own little space in the sky. We all have our own little place, like Le Petit Prince, the little prince. We all have our little planet. So we respect everyone as having their own little planet, not just being part of my planet, not being part of my constellation. You're only here for me in my movie, to be an actor or prop in my movie of how I discover who I am, see my own reflection in things. I have to see you as being others, being different than myself. And so you can see in a wider sense of what it means to respect other people's properties, to respect other people. And there you go. So that's how about we leave it there for now. And you can see, I just wanted to say here, we can talk, as always, my good friend of mine, my friend Rhonda always says, it was her teacher told, that your morality is your reality, of course. In other words, what you project out in terms of your actions ends up creating the world that you live in. So we can see that you can see, even talking this, what you would do, what the world would look like if you behave this way. Be very, very different, wouldn't it? Okay, so let's just take a moment here to dedicate this to talk on ethics and the Pratimoksha vows. And just again, just may we dedicate it. May we be able to observe these vows, make them our main practice in life, embody them, live them, make it sort of our main sort of, sort of prayer ritual as an offering to the Buddhas and all beings, to make us really sort of pave the way to full awakening. The blessings of all holy beings, truth of karma, and the power of pure intention, for Dharma, which is beautiful. Okay, thank you, and see you next time.